first, I have to just kind of mention the rules and regulations. I haven't said what the rules and regulations are up until this point because, again, compliant versus accessible. But you do need to know what they are. The first thing that came out was the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. That led to two things that are of importance for us. Section 508, if you are a government website, you've been supposed to be making your website Section 508 compliant since 1973, or since websites became a thing. And the Rehabilitation Act is also what led to the Americans with Disabilities Act, which next year will be its 30th year. There are other regulations as well, though, that you might fall under. The CVAA, or the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act, that is enforced by the FCC. There's also the Air Carrier Access Act, which is enforced by FAA and the Department of Transportation. These are other sets of accessibility rules. There are other sets of accessibility rules. There's the Canadian Human Rights Act. There's also the European Accessibility Act. Now, this is probably the most comprehensive set of accessibility rules to date. This is by the European Union, and it was just passed this year. And it requires several things, like you're required to do this as part of your development, not just as an afterthought. And all websites that fall under this, they have 3 years, well, each member state has 3 years to adopt their restrictions or greater. They can make them even more restrictive. And every website has to be compliant within 6 years. And it applies to a whole bunch of stuff: e-commerce, e-books, banking, telephones, smartphones, ticketing and check-in systems, computers and operating systems. So basically everything except your personal blog has to be compliant.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does that also go with the apps that are associated with the websites?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Apps, software, all these things. Yeah. Yeah. And interestingly, your app doesn't excuse your website. So if you can make a really accessible app, but that doesn't mean your website is then free from being accessible. The standards that we're talking about, well, Section 508, and that was refreshed this last year. There's the Section 508 refresh, what it's called. Basically just modernized a lot of the things that were in it. The most important one that you're probably going to worry about is what's called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. Currently there's version 2.0. There's also a version 2.1. Most websites, though, we're still talking about meeting WCAG 2.0 compliance. 2.1 adds support for mobile devices. So your website has to be responsive or adaptive to a mobile device. There's also 3 layers of it. A is the simplest to meet. Double A is, in order to meet double A, you have to meet everything in A plus the things that are in double A. And then triple A is almost impossible to meet, honestly. Most websites these days, and most of the court cases and most of the regulations are all based on WCAG 2.0 AA. That's the kind of the current industry standard. There's another document I want you to just know about. It's called a VPAT. If you are doing government purchasing of software, you need to get a VPAT from the company you're going to purchase from. This is a voluntary product accessibility template. Basically, the company self-reporting on how accessible their product is before you buy it. However, this is becoming a life of its own. So, for example, Texas Department of Education, they require a VPAT now for every product that they're going to even consider for purchasing. or renewal on their contracts, and it has to be done by an independent third party. So their purchasing area was around April. So the first 4 months of this year, I wrote an ungodly number of VPATs for different companies. Yes?
Did you say that was for software only or any?
Well, digital product. You know, you would also do it for websites, software, you know, software as a service type things. So, all right, let's talk about what you're doing wrong. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk, again, we're talking in general terms of accessibility failures and how to fix them. And I'm mostly going to begin talking about web, but everything applies to, when we're doing Microsoft Word, to all these things that we're going to be here are going to apply as well. And the first, most common, is missing alt text. So, if I put in an image in an HTML, and like I said, that's the only HTML that's going to be in my presentation, this is how I do it, all right? Simple little bit of code. Image, and that's where you get it from. If that's all you do, when JAWS gets there, it's going to read that file name to the user, which is not helpful at all, because it doesn't know what else to do. It says, well, there's an image here. I know that, but I don't know what to tell you, so I'm going to read the file name and maybe you'll get something out of it. In this case here, no. So instead, I'm going to add alt text to this image, and that's just another little attribute on that tag. Do you have a pretty good idea what the picture is going to be? I've described the image for the user. Important to know that I'm describing the reason I put this image here. A good alt text should be very short, and it should be an explanation of the purpose of the image. So I said this is the arch with a phrase. If this was a news story about Reno downtown at night, I would probably say this is the Reno Arch at night, because that's why I put that picture there. It's not just about the picture, it's about why it's there on the page. So a good rule of thumb is, if you were reading this page over the phone to somebody and you got to the picture, what would you say? As fewer words as possible. Now there's going to be times where you have images that don't have a purpose, that are just decorative, in which case you're going to still put in alt text, but you're going to leave it blank. So you're going to say alt equals quote quote. And that tells the screen reader this is a decorative image. Don't bother reading it. But if you leave it off, then it tries to read the file name because it thinks you made a mistake. So missing alt text is bad, but so is having incorrect alt text on your images. I see this a lot. Picture. I was doing a site the other day where it was a commerce site, and all the alt text were the product ID number, which was a string of like 40 characters, letters, and numbers. It's terrible. Instead of the product name. So this is bad. But equally bad is this, because it's completely irrelevant. None of that stuff is important to the understanding of this picture, right? This is a better alt text for that same picture. Kevin Murphy at a Giants game. You understand the reason for the picture now, right? Yeah, I put a picture of me. This was a company outing. We had, because my office is based out of San Francisco. I have full-time telecommute, and we took all of our people over there, and we had I think 4 people in our group who couldn't see the field. So we just talked and said, yeah, oh, that was a great double play to second base, and stuff like that, and it was a great experience for them as well. Other pictures, charts, pie charts. When you get more complex, you can't really just throw a ton of alt text in there to explain it. So often then you have to explain it in other ways. A lot of times too with charts and graphs that we have, the information that we need is actually in the body copy of our content, right? We've already discussed that 20% of the people are, this is our budget and these are our numbers. In which case the pie chart's just a visual representation of that. Do you need to have a complex alt chart, alt text on it? Probably not, because the content is there. Otherwise, you have to do things like link it out to other information, or make sure that that information is somewhere on that page. So we can do a pie chart where it says, the alt text just says, figure 12 showing the distribution of income. And then in the body copy we say, as we see in figure 12, the distribution of income is fully accessible, because all of that information is still there. Don't rely on color. This is a football game from 2015, the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets, as part of their Color Rush campaign. Anybody have a guess where I'm going with this? I saw this game live, or not, on the TV, and it was just visually jarring for me. But if you're colorblind, that's what you saw, including one of the kickers on one of the teams. That's the game that they experienced. Don't use color alone to convey information. You're probably not going to design NFL uniforms. I get that. Probably not, most of you. But what are you going to do? Well, you're going to do stuff like this. This is a field form where you're putting in a password, and as you're typing it, the things change from green to red to let you know that you have met that. Color alone for meaning. What about a chart? What's the difference between the red line and the blue line? You can't tell. What if you made one of the lines dotted instead of solid? Now you've met the standard. You've also made it work so that if you print this out on a black and white printer, you would still be able to tell the information. Again, the curb cut effect. You are making it better for everybody. The one we see a lot too is this. You have a form, it's in error, so you mark it in red. Which field is in error? How do you know which field is in error if you can't see the color? You can't. So that's a very common thing we see a lot, is when you're using color for meaning. Low color contrast. This is another one. This is one of the few areas where I really tell you, this is a part where you should tweak your design. Because you need to have color contrast that is dark enough so that people can see it. Can you read that? It's even worse on the screen. It's incredibly low color contrast. Now that's just a fake one. But here's a website that I tested recently. These links at the bottom, very low color contrast. Quit putting gray text on gray backgrounds. Or using that really thin light gray text with a really light font. Tell your designers to stop it. Here's another one though. It's an orange text on a yellow background. People with low vision are going to have a hard time being able to read that. And if you put it into that high contrast mode, it's all going to be the same color. Because there's not enough difference between it. It's going to take both of those colors and make them white or make them black. So that information will disappear. So the rule is that it has to be 4.5 to 1 for regular text and 3 to 1 for large text. It's a little bit more subtle than that, but there are definitely tools that will help you, and I will show you some at the end. Links. Where's that link taking you? You have no idea, right? Remember when I showed JAWS earlier and I went and said, okay, show me all the links on this page? If I had a whole page that just said click here, click here, click here, click here, I wouldn't know which one is which, right? So first of all, it's 2019. You can stop telling people to click here. If they can't figure out that that's a link, they could not have gotten to your web page. All right? You do not need to tell people to click anymore. So never, ever, ever, ever write the words click here ever again the rest of your lives. All right? I built my first university website in 1996. Back then, okay, you had to tell people to click on things. Nowadays you don't, really, truly. So how could I have done this better? Well, this is something I see a lot. To learn about our services, click here. How many of you have this link on your website right now? Something just like this. Probably all of you. Or something else there, instead of click here, could you see, view this on our website. So learn more about services on our website. We're still not clear, are we? Learn more about our services. Better. Still not great though. Now it makes sense. If I just got this, I would know exactly what that link is taking me to. Now, this falls into that curb cut effect as well. Google pays a lot of attention to the words that are in links for building its index. So it's really great to have your links make sense. So a lot of people want to just make one word as your link. No, make a phrase as your link. It's fine. Make them longer. Don't do an entire paragraph, but make them long enough so that it makes sense when you see the link. Okay, structure. Here's a newspaper. Could you imagine reading a newspaper that looked like that? I've erased all the headings. No, it's impossible. Headings and other things in your HTML or in your Word document are not just to make your text bigger. Headings provide structure. If you remember back to listening to JAWS, it identified there are 11 headings on this page. So if I was using JAWS and I got to this newspaper, I could just hear all of the headings and find out that there's a raging blaze in the LA foothills. That's the story I wanted. Visually, I can move down there, but if I'm using JAWS and I have to go through the entire thing, that's really annoying. So headings are structural elements. There's a whole bunch of other ones too. Lists. There is a tool for doing lists in HTML and in Word. Putting an asterisk in front of a paragraph does not make it a list. Now in Microsoft Word, it will probably correct that to a list. I don't know about you, but I spend most of my time fighting against Microsoft Word's auto corrections. But so what we're looking for here is what's called semantic HTML. We want, if it's a list, use the list tool. If it's a heading, use a heading tool. Don't just take a couple words and make them big and bold. Use a heading. And properly structure your headings too. The first heading should be a heading level 1. Below that should be a heading level 2. And there's a whole thing about, again, search engine optimization and heading structure. Google pays attention to your headings. So, motor skills barriers, some things that issues people will have if they have motor skills disabilities. The three main ones are, without using the mouse, can you see everything that is actionable? Can you activate it? And finally, does the order make sense? Do you start at the top of the page when you're tabbing through, or does it jump you down to the bottom of the page? So here's me navigating the same site. I'm not using the mouse. You can see my mouse cursor up there, it's not moving. And I am seeing which things can be activated. I can activate it. I can see, oh, that's a link. Those are links that I can activate. So I can navigate this whole website without using a mouse. That's kind of the big one for motor skills. But again, the motor skills is an interesting one because if I can navigate, the first thing I always do when I'm testing is use the keyboard. and try to navigate the site. Because if I can't do it with the keyboard, JAWS is going to not work with it either. I just know that from experience. JAWS is going to be even more finicky, but if it doesn't even work with the keyboard, it's not going to work. All right? It's just not for almost everybody. So again, that's motor skills. You have to be able to navigate a site without a mouse. What about hearing and speech? Well, speech, again, we talked about, probably doesn't apply to any of you. But hearing does, because you probably have some videos. And you've probably thrown them into YouTube and just said, let's do the auto captions. That's going to be fine, right? Good enough. No, it's not. And I've got a little video here to show it to you.
Time for another Caption Fail video.
This is when we use YouTube's audio transcription tool, which doesn't always do the best job translating.
We write a script, act it out, then upload it, let the tool translate it, then make that into a script, act it out, and upload it, then let that be made into a script.
Here are all 3 scripts acted out, back to back to back.
We put the exact words of what the computer told us to say on the screen.
Enjoy. Hello?
Hey man, how's your Jamaican vacation going?
Oh yeah, it's great. This is like definitely the best Jamaican vacation ever.
You on the beach?
Yep, just laying out, getting some vitamin D, drinking out of one of those coconuts with the top cut off. This place is paradise.
Oh man, just hold the phone up in the air and let me hear the ocean. Whoosh, whoosh. Hold on a second. You're not on vacation, are you?
No, I'm not. I just needed some time alone. I mean, we work together constantly. I needed some me time.
You gotta be kidding me. You faked a freaking vacation just to be alone?
What else was I supposed to do?
Wait a second, I can hear you. Are you actually in the building?
No, I'm not in the building.
I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna kill you!
You'll never find me.
Where are you?
Well, I'm definitely not on the same hall as you.
Ha! I found you! What are you thinking? I would never lie to you about a fake Jamaican vacation.
Oh yeah? Well, what about that time you wrecked my El Camino and told me that a Kesha impersonator had carjacked you and ran into a pole in the Panda Express parking lot?
That's different. I was taking a lot of pain medication for my herniated disc and my judgment was clouded.
Well, what are you gonna do about it?
I'm gonna take this fist right here and punch you in the face!
You wouldn't dare. Let's do that again. Hello?
Imitated Jamaican vacation diet.
Old, it's great. This is like definitely the best Jamaican occasion ever.
You ought to be it.
Leptin Selena Kitten's vitamin D, Generalist coconuts with the top card, displaces parents.
Ah, Red. Just hold the phone up in the end of the Indians.
Question of.
What's that? You know they can generate.
No, Net Disney's anti-male. I mean, we work together, Castelli, and he doesn't need time.
You gotta be can we do you think if we can make a shit just be alone?
What else was I supposed to do?
Wednesday. I think you're you. Inventing the building?
And
Unsealing Kale!
Hanky.
Where are?
Downstream at the College U.
How about it? Or Caroline, you about free to make implication.
On the Elmo, what about the time you read Malcolm? You know, to me, that a cash impersonator cardiac UN ran into a Paul in an expert parking lot.
That's different. I was taking a lot of indication. Argued, disconnected, flat.
What are you gonna do about it?
Undertake. This describes fractionally touch.
You wanna get? Does it again. Hello?
Imitated you may give a case about?
All the late disability, but then we did, you know.
You armies?
Letters a week, it was immediate. Generalist coconuts with top cop, displaces pets.
Ah, there. Just hold off on community needs.
Student.
What's that? You know the generator?
Noting that Disney's anti-male and you will work together to stop the NTSB track.
You gotta be. Do you think it receiving cages beyond?
Well, those are supposed to do.
Where they are taking you out of there. And stately KO.
Kinky.
Well?
Gastritis. Cat.
Off balance. Or Caroline, you're about to make imitation.
all-male model. What about the time you read Malcolm? You don't need any cash. Impersonator cardiac UN ran into an appalling expired parking lot.
That's different technology negation. Argued, disconnected acts.
Witty and all that?
Undertake this discourse actually types.
You'll forget. There's a big hit. Thanks for watching.
Click here to watch our previous Caption Fail video.
Click here to subscribe to our channel.
Here's our Facebook and our Twitter.
Well, Twitters.
Twitters, plural. Twittises.
The serious point there is YouTube does have this auto captioning feature. It's great for getting you started, but you cannot rely on it. You have to go in and edit the captions in YouTube. Now, if you're using another video service, like Vimeo or anything like that, Vimeo now has some auto caption tools and some captioning tools, but honestly, the ones on YouTube are better, and the auto transcription is actually better than what it is on some of the other sites. So what I always do, honestly, is I upload it to video as a hidden video, let it transcribe the audio, make the corrections there, and then I can export that transcript, that audio, the closed captioning file, and put it into something else. So if you are at the university, this is the recommended procedure. Put it into YouTube, and then export that file out, and put that into Camtasia, which is their video software for online learning. You can pay outside companies to do this as well. Generally, they're about $1 a minute to $3 a minute. So a 60-minute video is going to cost you $100, $120 to have it accurately captioned. And I can tell almost immediately whether or not it's going to be accurately captioned or not. I just look for punctuation and capitalization, because those are not put in by YouTube. It will not capitalize the words correctly. So as soon as I see that, I go, okay, this is going to fail. All right, cognitive. Please stop writing in all caps. We read by shapes of words, right? Not just the letters, but by the shape as well. And for people with cognitive disabilities, even things like dyslexia, putting everything in all caps is really hard to read. Now, if it's just a heading, okay, fine. I still don't like it. I still like to make them normal case. But if you're making an entire paragraph uppercase, please stop that. Well, but everyone needs to pay attention to this. Well, then make it bold. Stop writing in all caps. It's also shouting in internet terms these days. Keep everything consistent. I was working on an e-commerce site, and this is the page with the product on it. On some pages, they have this little mini cart, and some pages it was over here on the right. On other pages, it was down on the bottom on the left. On other pages, it wasn't there at all. So be consistent with how you navigate the site. You don't have to match everybody else's site, but you have to match your own site. You have to be consistent with what you're doing. And that, again, good design for everybody. People get used to, oh, well, their little mini cart's on the right. I know exactly where it's going to be. And when you put it on the left, they might miss it. So they might miss that important thing. Limit motion. This is especially important for people with seizures and stuff like that. Another e-commerce site I had, at the very top, they had a little thing that was scrolling by announcing their specials. Okay, that's not so bad. Then below that, they had a slideshow of their products going by at a different speed. Below that, they had another thing of specials scrolling by. So they had 3 things moving at different speeds constantly with no way to turn them off. I had a hard time reading their site. And again, this was probably a marketing decision on their part. Their company was like, well, we got to get these specials out and everybody. Let's throw up another banner and make it actionable and move around, and so don't have a lot of stuff moving on your page that can't be stopped. Another one that's really kind of annoying is background videos. I know it's like the big thing right now for a lot of websites is to have a big video in the background, but again, it's distracting and it can cause issues for people. So for people with cognitive disabilities, you want to focus on making a good usable design, easy to navigate, and clean. Give yourself some space. Don't just cram everything into a little spot. And that, again, just good design. White space is an important part of your design.